Did you know about the gay man who wrote many of our favorite classic Disney songs, as well as one of the most iconic Broadway musicals? Hi friends, my name is Joe Bushy, and this is Be Gay, Make History, a podcast dedicated to the history of the LGBTQ community. And this week we are talking about American playwright and lyricist Howard Ashman. Before we dive right into what Howard Ashman is most known for, I do want to explain kind of how he got to where he did and became the lyricist and the playwright that he is. In 1950, Howard Ashman was born in Baltimore, Maryland. In grade school, Howard found his love for theater through the Baltimore Children's Theater Association, and it would be this passion and this love for theater that would drive him through the rest of his life. In 1979, he would graduate from Indiana University with a Master's of Fine Art, and shortly after that, like many other young queer creatives at the time, he would make the move to New York City. He was hired as an editor by a publisher in the city, and that's what he thought he would do for the rest of his life. While working as an editor, he was also still writing his own work. At this time is when his first two plays came out, titled "'Cause Maggie is Afraid of the Dark" and "Dreamland." And these two plays were produced, but they were met with mixed reviews. He wasn't deterred by the mixed reviews, and his third play actually is the first one that holds significance. His third play, titled "Confirmation," would be produced by Princeton's McCarter Theater as well as the Annabeth Center in Philadelphia in 1976. And he would take a full dive into the theater world when he, along with R. Stewart White and Kyle Rennick, founded WPA, an iconic Broadway theater. And so I'm sure that it isn't a surprise that this is where he ended up conceiving, writing, and producing his most iconic musical. Before I tell you which musical it is, I want to give you a few hints so that you can maybe try to guess it before I tell you. Your first hint is that this musical is the most produced musical by high schools in the United States. Next, it was revived on Broadway in 2003 and London's West End in 2007. Alright, so this last one you should be able to get even if you aren't a massive theater person. Take a listen.
Feed me Seymour, feed me all night long.
And just a quick disclaimer, Warner Bros. Owns the copyright to this, and I am only using it for educational purposes. So if you guessed Little Shop of Horrors, you'd be correct. Growing up as a gay theater kid and doing many musicals, when I found out about Howard Ashman's connection to Little Shop of Horrors, it made my little gay heart happy. So where did Ashman go with the success of Little Shop of Horrors? From the intro from this episode, you may have guessed it, that he next went to Disney. In 1986, Disney brought him on as a lyricist to a team that was working on the movie Oliver and Company. Little did Disney or even Ashman himself know that this would be the spark that started the Disney Renaissance. After his work on Oliver and Company, Disney offered him several projects which they had not been able to give focus to, the most important one being The Little Mermaid. And all 7 songs that made it into The Little Mermaid were written by Howard and his musical partner Alan Menken. With this being Disney's first musical in over 30 years, I imagine that there was quite a bit of pressure to succeed, and succeed it did. At its release, The Little Mermaid earned $84 million at the domestic box office, and went on to earn $235 million in lifetime gross worldwide. It actually was the 6th highest grossing film of 1989. Now the funny thing is that Disney's chairman Jeff Kartenberg initially warned that this would not make much money, as it would appeal to a mainly female viewership. I will let the results speak for themselves. Now, Kartenberg did eventually come around, and he was the first one to acknowledge that this would potentially be their first blockbuster hit. And of course, he was correct, and much of the credit for this goes to Howard. With this success and his charisma, which was often compared to Walt Disney himself, Howard became a mainstay at Disney. And while working on The Little Mermaid, Howard also pitched the idea for Aladdin, and for his pitch, he created 16 original songs. And as we all know, Howard's pitch was successful, but it did go through edits and changes before it reached its final form. On its release, 3 of Howard's original songs were included in the final edit. And as Aladdin went into production, Howard was approached about trying to save Beauty and the Beast. The original version of it was not a musical, and they had asked him to create music for it to breathe some new life into it. Howard agreed to write lyrics for Beauty and the Beast, but unfortunately this would be his final project. During the production of The Little Mermaid, Howard would be diagnosed with HIV. And this was right at the height of the HIV and AIDS pandemic. And this was a time when there wasn't much to prevent HIV progressing into AIDS. While writing the lyrics for Beauty and the Beast, Howard's health began to decline. Because he was so loved by the people at Disney, Disney created him a production unit near his house that allowed him to continue to work even while receiving treatment. And unfortunately, in 1991, Howard would pass away from complications with AIDS, just months before seeing his final project released to the public. And when Disney released Beauty and the Beast to the public, it was done in Howard's honor. And it featured a message in the end credits that read, "To our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul, we will be forever grateful. Howard Ashman, 1950 to 1991. I can't help but get teary-eyed every time I read that one. Howard's life and work helped to shape how a generation saw love, brought tears and laughter, and showed the world that if we look a little bit deeper, we may find the beauty underneath. And that is why we honor Howard Ashman and remember his accomplishments." If you enjoyed this week's episode, make sure you follow along so that you can be updated for the newest episodes coming out soon. And like I do every episode, I want to remind you that you just existing as a queer person in the universe is making history. So keep that shit up.